Chapter 273. Hostage Crisis Confirmed. Wednesday, July 10, 1996. Happy Troll Pubsiadashiad and Donald Davidson strolled into the Happy Troll pub, hoping that his American accident wouldn't be too obvious. Radner had sent him on a top-secret mission to determine if, as Clinton suspected, the 4 missing American allmen had been enslaved by the Siadani slave master who had tried to intercept the Big Texas. Davidson's goal was to figure out where the slave master had come from, and if possible to head on over to his place to see if the missing crewmen were there. Radner had managed to get hold of a document, albeit an old one, matching Siadani family crests to slaveholders, and determined that the crest on the drowned people's uniforms matched that of a Master Altry, a middle-class wizard who lived near Siadash. The document claimed that Altry held between 10 and 15 slaves, though it could be out of date. Davidson's alibi was that of a low-level slaveholder named Lissart, who knew Altry a while back. Apparently this Lissart had heard about Altry's unfortunate demise and wanted to offer condolences to Altry's widow. If everything went as planned, the people would direct him to Altry's plantation, where he would take a look around to see if any of the missing crewmen were there. If he found any of the hostages, he was to report back as soon as he could. Although he was a trained wizard, he wasn't there to start a fight, just to provide reconnaissance. The place was pretty crowded. He was surprised to see a couple of tattooed people working behind the counter and actually serving drinks. The slaves seemed in pretty decent physical condition, and he whistled silently to himself. Apparently, some of the slave owners were not as tough on their workers as Altry was. Virtually everyone in the room was talking about one of 3 things: the events of Judgment Day, Altry's ignominious demise, I never knew Altry liked to swim, or Clinton's speech. Radner had been right, Davidson thought. Apparently Clinton's abolitionist speech had made it to Círdan after all, and the people were concerned that the powerful Muggle nation was going to go to war to prevent slavery in the Atlantic. Seeing that a relatively talkative individual was discussing Altry's fate, he drew a deep breath and walked over to the speaker. Trying to be as polite as possible, he said, "Excuse me, sir, but would it be possible for you to discuss Altry's death some other time? I knew him from childhood, though we'd been a bit estranged of late. When I heard that he'd died, I was horrified. I was hoping to visit his family and offer my condolences." The Siadani winced and nodded. "I apologize, sir. I lost a couple of my friends in Judgment Day as well who didn't, so I can understand where you're coming from. Is there anything I can do to help in a time like this?" Davidson nodded. "Maybe you can get me up to speed on where he's living now. Last time I heard, he was in southern Siadash." The Siadani frowned. "I don't recall him spending time there." "This was a while ago, sir." "I see. Well, he runs 5 Tree Plantation, a few kilometers to the northwest of Siadash. I don't think it would be appropriate to just apparate in there, so you may want to fly over there. I see you've got a broom, which is good." Davidson patted his broom. "I'll fly in." "I agree. Simply surprising the mourners at their house won't be a good idea. Did he ever get married?" "Yes, master. I'm sorry, I don't think I got your name." "I'm Erpan." "Yes, Master Lissart. He got married maybe 10 years ago to some woman named Kerlia. He's got a 3-year-old son now, and his wife's running the plantation until the kid comes of age. I must say, Sen Altry's a pretty clever kid. He's got the missus running all over the house." "Can't the slaves take care of him? I can't imagine that all of his slaves escaped. How many did he have?" The Siadani chuckled. "He had 15 before Judgment Day. Needless to say, he lost a bunch of them after that." Davidson nodded. "Ah, yes, I heard he lost 3. The Siadani snorted. "3. Merlin's beard, number try 6. 6. He lost 40% of his stock." "Yup. However, that's not the worst of it. Supposedly 3 of them drowned, and 3 of them managed to escape to the United States." "The United States?" a powerful Muggle nation whose leader recently started abolitionist rhetoric. Many of us are worried that Círdan and the United States will go to war. I don't see how they can get over here without wizards, but apparently the threat is serious enough that the chancellors are worried. Davidson grunted. I hope not. That would be bad. We've lost too many good wizards already, and the world can't afford another war given what happened. Did they ever get the slaves back? The Círdan shook his head and smiled. Believe it or not, that stupid Muggle leader didn't know he had to listen to us. He decided to keep the slaves and compensate Altry for the lost slaves in gold. Davidson frowned. What's wrong with that? I assume he can get more slaves with the money. The Círdan laughed again. Oh, he got more slaves, and he didn't even have to pay for them. Apparently he tracked down 3 of the missing Yahoos to a large Muggle boat in the Atlantic. By the time he got there, however, the Yahoos were gone, presumably to the United States. What does Altry do? Obvious. He's already lost 6 slaves, and there are these 4 sleeping Muggles right on the boat. He brings back the Muggles and convinces everyone on the ship that a rogue wave knocked them overboard. Davidson was silent for a moment. This was precisely what Radner had been worried about. Would there be a war? Only time would tell. He forced out a laugh. Clever. Where are the 4 new slaves? Have they already started work? The Círdan shrugged. As far as I know, they have. They're probably up there at 5 Tree. Supposedly, Altry's widow has no idea how to talk to them, as they don't speak any civilized tongues I've heard of before. Davidson nodded, thankful that the man had given him an opening. I'll see if I can help her understand their language when I get there. Now, if you would excuse me, I have to go. Enjoy your beer. The Círdan raised his glass. Believe me, with the threat of war and a recent judgment day, I'm going to enjoy this beer a lot. 5 Tree Plantation. Consoling the bereaved woman and her son came naturally to Davidson. Although he detested the idea of slavery, he could relate to what the family had gone through. Nevertheless, Altry's widow was slowly being pushed over the edge by the possible threat from the United States. What did we do, Lissart? Our society would collapse without slaves, yet if this barbarian Clinton wants to attack us, he'll call the entire Muggle world in on us. Besides, I'm not like my late husband. No offense, but I never liked the way he treated the Yahoos. In fact, I've already promised myself that I won't ruin the lives of these 4 new fellows he just brought in. She snapped her fingers, and Davidson heard footsteps behind him. He spun around, and his eyes widened momentarily as he found himself looking into a member of the Big Texas's bridge crew, a man who was now sporting an awfully familiar tattoo on his forehead. The crewman bowed to him and spoke in horribly mangled Círdan. Good afternoon, Master Lissart. Is there anything I can help you with? An idea came to Davidson's mind. Rising, he said, Actually, Sira, I wouldn't mind it if you showed me where the facilities are. I need to use the restroom. The crewman nodded. Certainly. Follow me, please. Davidson followed the crewman into the restroom. As soon as they were alone, he switched to English and whispered in the man's ear. Your second officer, Jason Koyman, right? The Yahoo stared at him. What? How did you? Davidson shushed him up. Listen, I work for the American Department of Magic and Radner. Are all 4 of you here? Koyman looked around quickly, then nodded. Yup, we're all here. I take it you're going to be getting us out of this hellhole. I can't do it myself. However, rest assured, my friend. Clinton knows about your situation and has developed a distinct distaste for Círdan. We'll be evacuating you and pressuring Círdan to reform as soon as possible. I doubt we'll invade, but we might start sending special agents over to destabilize things. Koyman breathed a sigh of relief and shook his head. We'd appreciate that, sir. I'll tell the other 3 guys. I take it you don't need to use the bathroom after all, then. Davidson shook his head. No. Koyman nodded and flushed the toilet. Good. I'm in one of the huts in the back of the house. You can see them from the room you were in. And for what it's worth, don't kill the woman or the kid. Although she still has a long way to go to accepting Muggles as equals, she isn't nearly the sadist Altry was. Davidson shook the man's hand. I agree with your assessment of Mrs. Altry, and I'll keep that in mind when I report to the president. Abandoned building, warehouse district tractor. The door opened with a creak to reveal an airlock. Preparing herself for the transition between swimming and sliding, Detective Kima entered the building. She instantly recognized the man waiting for her, and his companion also seemed quite familiar. Well, well, no heart, Sam. I should have recognized your bling when we found it. How come you have both your hands? Instead of answering, the wizard just pulled off his glove, revealing an unnatural silver right hand. Ouch! And you, Vila girl, didn't I see you dancing in Adnalros? Curious, the wizard turned to the Vila. Adnarlos, what kind of place is it? The girl, visibly embarrassed, stammered. It's a gentleman's club, Kima cruelly remarked. She means it's a striptease bar. Oh, said the wizard, visibly hurt, and put some distance between Myrtil and himself. What such a trivial thing, completely missing the great no-heart Sam's fabled attention. Do tell me, where else did you meet her then? I rescued her from the same goblins that did this to my hand, and she's willing to be a witness in their case. Just as she helped me capture those goblins and proven herself to be a fierce warrior, but also a decent gentlewoman. Or so I believed. Anyway, we brought what we promised. How about your part of the deal? Kima's voice became formal, as much as one can tell with that shrieking. I have the power to give you a deal signed by the eldest of Rattle himself that grants you impunity for past and present crimes. All you have to do is witnessing in this case under the effects of a one-time unbreakable vow against lying, and you'll get your ring back if you survive stating it's still rightfully yours. I accept, said the wizard. Now let's go collect those criminals. Seeing the wizard and the Vila were still visibly upset with each other, she added, Oh, and one more thing. Before we go, I'd like to speak to both of you privately. Sam, come with me. Entering one of the small side rooms, Samina turned to the detective. Okay, we're alone. What's so secret that Myrtil can't hear it when you already blurted my street name? You know, I'm not a criminal. I apologize for it. I only wanted to say that unlike most employees in Odnarlos, Miss Trepanier never did anything else for the guests other than dancing and accepting drinks. I see. I guess I'd been too quick to judge her. Not at all. Until I told about her profession, you gave her all the respect she was due. I'd be happy to hear it'll continue that way. Moments later, same room. Look, you don't have to tell anything, began the Vila. I don't care if he's a criminal. He rescued me, and that's it. I'll travel home to Nestor after the trial anyway. It's not like I'd have to stay in the same town with him. You misunderstood. Despite having a fearsome reputation, he's not cruel at all. I know him quite well. He's always been a gentleman. A gentleman named Nohart, snorted Myrtil, like I'll believe it. Oh, that nickname has nothing to do with cruelty. You see, this is not the first time he got into trouble. A few years ago, a guy ran a sword clean through Sam's chest. The lucky bastard, instead of dying as anyone in such a situation should, just asked for a medic to pull it out. Turns out, it missed all vital organs. He got away with a pair of really thought-provoking scars and a new nickname. Nice story, but if he didn't do anything bad, why do people fear him? Let's just say that few things are more dangerous than a house, elf whose master is threatened, and leave it at that. I understand. Thank you for enlightening me, Detective. Chapter 274, Truce for Humans. Wednesday, July 10, 1996, Britain for Humans Headquarters. Isabel Miller couldn't believe it. The wizards had actually agreed to her demands. Not only were they going to require 2 unbreakable vows for all members in public office, obedience to the laws of the land, and a refusal to use magic as weapon, except in self-defense, but additional vows would allow them membership in a prestigious society known as the Order of Aes Sedai. Even more amazing, was the fact that this Order of Aes Sedai was supposedly taken out of a sword and sorcery fantasy series. From what she had been told, the wizards hadn't been particularly fond of the idea, but the Grand Mugwump had hammered it through. Still, several nations were threatening to not enforce the vows. Although officially they argued that the Aes Sedai oaths were setting a bad precedent for an Atlantis power grab, Isabel suspected that their real motivation involved corruption in government or plans to become the next Voldemort. There were 6 vows in all. Wizards who adopted more vows would be seen as more trustworthy than those who adopted fewer, and Isabel suspected that there would rapidly be peer pressure to adopt as many vows as possible. In addition to the ones against offensive magic and obedience to the laws of the land, their vows against creating weapons, magically renouncing any of the unbreakable vows, and transmitting the vow requirements to the next generation of wizards. The latest controversies involved the so-called 6th vow. It was a requirement that wizards not lie unless they felt that telling the truth would jeopardize them or an ally in some way. People were arguing that people wouldn't be lying if it didn't benefit them in some way to begin with, which implied that not doing so would be detrimental to them in some way. A loose interpretation of the vow could effectively render the restriction meaningless. Furthermore, it would cover situations like white lies as well. What was wrong with a white lie, especially if no one was harmed by it? Finally, many wizards argued that the ability to lie was part of being human or sentient, as they put it, as there were sentient beings other than humans. Removing that ability would make the person less or more than human. Reports were coming which would have Atlantis eliminate the 6th vow and replace it with an agreement that the wizard have a secrecy censor within easy reach in his or her office. People had the right to ask the wizard to activate the secrecy censor whenever they wished, and this gave the Muggles the opportunity to force wizards to tell the truth if they so chose. The catch, of course, was that the secrecy censor was impartial and would report on lies spoken by either the wizard or the Muggle. The Muggles had originally balked at that development, but Dagger had apparently convinced them that it would be a good way to prevent future persecution and manipulation of wizards still somewhat unfamiliar with the Muggle world. Isabel had been surprised to hear that unbreakable vows were already in use in one wizard community, that of an obscure undersea territory known as Roctorattle, who on Earth had a Q without a U. This land, populated by the same bizarre creatures which had inhabited the lake near Hogwarts, apparently required that political leaders swear a vow promising to obey the laws of the land and rule fairly and impartially, very similar to the proposed 3rd vow. This nation functioned pretty well, and it seemed to be at peace. The merpeople also claimed that the vow cut down on corruption a great deal and that they didn't see why other cultures couldn't try it out. There were actually 2 variations of the 5th vow: to never renounce any of the vows, and to never renounce the 2nd, 4th, 5th, or, for Aes Sedai, 6th vows while the wizard was serving in office. Wizards who adopted the 5th vow upon inauguration could choose either phrasing. Both of them were enough to allow for accepted status. However, wizards who swore the latter lost accepted status once they left office. Many wizards had already adopted the vows. Grand Mugwump Dagher had taken the Aes Sedai oaths, with an older version of the 6th vow, live on television, and the Pope, John Paul, had done so shortly thereafter. A good 20% of the wizards in the United States had already taken the 1st and 3rd oaths, as had 16% of those in Britain. Among those in the Ministry of Magic and equivalent positions in the United States, 45% had already been sworn in, and the number was rising rapidly. The vast majority of the wizards had chosen to take novice status, simply accepting the 1st and 3rd vows. 20% of the wizards who had taken vows had chosen accepted status, and only 5% of them had chosen Aes Sedai. Of those who had elected to go all the way, 75% of them had agreed to use the secrecy censors to ensure truthfulness if needed. It slowly dawned on her that this may very well result in the best of both worlds. Wizards who were corrupt would inevitably be outed as soon as they tried to break the laws of the land. They'd wince in pain when they tried to violate their oath, and they'd naturally get kicked out of office. Meanwhile, good wizards would be able to continue operating as before. It was a clever idea, and it was good enough for her. There was no longer a reason to fight evil wizards if it were no way for the bad guys to get into positions of power. Granted, there could be a few bad apples here and there, but the people who had sworn to obey the laws would take care of them. Within an hour, she was at the podium saying that the Aes Sedai Protocol was enough for Britain for humans. The organization would no longer target civilians, and it would exempt wizarding political leaders who had taken at least novice-level oaths. The capitulation of Britain for humans sent shock waves around the world. Now that all three of the major World for Humans organizations had agreed to lay down their weapons in exchange for Aes Sedai oaths and psychological screening, the smaller ones began to see the writing on the wall. They, too, soon began to announce truces and armistices. By the end of the week, 95% of World for Humans had caved in. The wizards were free from persecution at last from all known secular agencies. The Celestine Church, however, was not a secular agency Oval Office. Clinton looked at Gore and shook his head. This isn't good. Despite all we've done, consumer confidence has dropped 35% and unemployment has already hit 8.3%. Markets are drying up and people are hoarding coins under their beds. Gore nodded. You got it, Bill. I'm not sure what to do next, to be honest with you. People are still panicking whenever issues involving the search for bodies in New York and Miami make the news. Rest assured that Bob Dole is absolutely crowing about this. We've got to think of something. Clinton turned to the window and looked in the direction of the National Mall. Those fellows who sent us that obelisk are traders, right? Gore nodded. Yup, those Xylons are as well. The term's actually Xyland. Al, you would expect they don't have much Muggle stuff at the moment, right? I would say so, yes. Why? Clinton winked at him. I bet they'd like to buy stuff, right? And they've got an embassy, right? Gore chuckled. You're going to try to start selling stuff to the wizards if the Muggles aren't going to buy it. Why not? Now that we are sure the wizards will behave, we can trust them to not do anything crazy with them. Gore frowned. There aren't many wizards, Bill. It's not going to be much. But it should tide us over until people come back to their senses, or, at the very least, until after the election. The Pentagon. Monica Lewinsky had a problem. Secrecy sensors had started popping up all over the Pentagon, courtesy of the Smoky Mountains facility. The military brass had ordered a caseload of them as soon as word had leaked out that they would affect both Muggles and wizards. If everything went as planned during this test, the FBI would start handing them out to courts, military bases, and police stations across the country. Several would be kept in the Pentagon to ferret out spies. She really hoped no one would ask her what she did with the president. Enfield, Ma Radner frowned. You saw them. Davidson nodded. Yes, sir, I did. They're being held on Altry's plantation, 5 Tree Plantation. I told them we're going to come and get them. Radner looked at him. What's your assessment of the situation in the Ciudadani government? They seem to have gotten the president's meaning, sir. Many of the civilians are worried about American intervention. Altry's widow, who is a decent person who didn't like what Altry had been doing, was complaining that Círdan was in a bind. If they give up the slaves, their society collapses, and if they don't, we invade. It sounds like they're slowly starting to put themselves on guard. Radner looked out the window and saw the fish going by, sort of like the Confederacy before the Civil War. Yes, sir. In all fairness, though, they have a point. Everything there is based on the feudal system, and trying to get rid of it is going to be as easy as it is for us to get rid of democracy or capitalism. Radner nodded. Do you think we can rescue them? Davidson smiled. Yes, I memorized one man's location, so we can apparate there once we get inside Círdan's apparition shield. Radna thought for a moment. I'll tell the president. Let's hope he doesn't ask for an invasion to distract the country from the bad economy. For all he knows, the Círdan abducted 1,000 Americans from cruise ships in the Bermuda Triangle in the 1950s. Chapter 275. Concern in Houyhnhnmland. Wednesday, July 11, 1996, Stronghoof Manorhianland of the Houyhnhnms Ihel was about ready to inform his masters that lunch was ready when he overheard Hahach's voice through the door. What do you mean? They're thinking of attacking Círdan. Hahach's husband, Latchen, grunted, and Ihel heard him kick at the floor with his hind legs. Hind legs were something that he, Ihel, wouldn't have minded from time to time, particularly when it came to running and working quickly. However, he was a Yahoo, and all Yahoos had 2 legs. He could wish for freedom as well, but he doubted that would happen either. When Latchen responded, he sounded irritable. That's what I heard, wife. Apparently this Muggle nation managed to find out that Círdan enslaves Muggles. Their leader, a Yahoo, what would you expect, promptly decided that an anti-slavery crusade would be a pretty good idea. Interesting coincidence, is it not? They can't get at Círdan, my husband. Besides, how can a Muggle nation take out a country with thousands of wizards who excel at subduing Muggles? Latchen hesitated briefly before responding. The United States holds one of the Judgment Day keys. They're probably the most powerful Muggle nation in the entire world. If anyone can do it, it's them, particularly if Nestor decides to play as well. The United States also supposedly fought a civil war where slavery was one of the points of contention. My manager thinks there's a 50-50 shot of this war starting up. Believe me, that's the last thing we need right now. Ihel's mind raced. A powerful Muggle nation was going to be picking on Círdan because they enslaved Muggles. This could be the break the Yahoos here in Houyhnhnmland needed to get out from under their centaur overlords. All they had to do was figure out how to tell the United States that Ihel and his friends needed help as well. If they got angry enough to fight Círdan over Muggle enslavement, imagine their reaction to a nation where virtually all humans were second-class citizens. Being part of the 2 exceeds 4 revolutionary underground movement could come in handy here. Ihel was fairly certain that his cell's leader would jump at the chance to ally with the United States. Ihel wanted to hear more. However, the food was getting cold, and he knew his master didn't like cold food. He knocked on the door and announced himself. There was a brief delay, after which Latchen told him to come in. Ihel opened the door, faced the 2 centaurs, and bowed. Master, mistress, here's your lunch. I hope you like it. Hahach took a whiff and smiled. Doesn't smell half bad, actually. What is it? Hay pudding, mistress. The cook suspects that it will indulge both your equine and human halves. Latchen nodded. Give him my compliments, Ihel, and tell him that we're going to probably need a second helping up here. I suspect that this stuff is going to be gone before you get back down there. Ihel bowed once more. Very good, master. I'll do that. The master nodded, and Ihel left the room. He headed to the kitchen to place the order for seconds. Once he was done with that, he stopped by his room to send a coded message to 2 Exceeds 4 Mari Territory New Zealand. The Mari chief witch doctor, who also doubled as the New Zealand Minister of Magic, shook his head. Hell no. I'm not going to swear those damn oaths. The Muggle president of New Zealand frowned. Why not? I don't see any reason not to, particularly if they'll prevent Britain from Muggles from attacking you guys. The witch doctor rolled his eyes. I'm all for the wizards learning to police themselves better. The problem isn't the oaths themselves. It's the fact that Atlantis is intervening in what is normally a states' rights area. This looks a lot like a power grab to me, sir. What they should have done is instructed each wizarding state to implement new policies which ensured that wizards behaved long-term. This sets a bad precedent. The Muggle frowned. I see what you're saying. Don't you trust the grand mugwump? The witch doctor gritted his teeth. I trusted Dialynis, as well as his predecessor Dumbledore. I have no idea who this Dagger fellow is, though. He appears to have come out of nowhere over the past few months. I have no idea how he'll react once the aftershocks of Judgment Day subside. He's sworn the eyes, said I, oaths. From what I've been told, all 6 of them. If there's anyone who's going to be trustworthy, it's an eyes, said I. The minister threw his hands up in the air. All right, Dagger's mortal. He dies. What about his successors? The Muggle hesitated for a moment before responding. I personally think you're being a bit paranoid, Minister. However, be that as it may, how is Dagger going to react to this? The witch doctor shrugged. Beats me. Hopefully he'll realize that he's overstepped his boundaries and change some of the rules. Had the Mary Wizarding Senate recommended that all of us take those particular unbreakable vows, I'd have been all for it. Having Atlantis force us to swallow the vows, however, is much too dangerous. Seacors, NY, cameras flashed as Eric Street stood at the podium. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Wizarding Services Corporation is proud to announce that 2 new regional headquarters have been set up in Fort Lauderdale and here in Syracuse. Both are accepting applications for new wizards to help with the reconstruction of Ogdensburg, New York, and Miami. Syracuse was chosen because it's relatively close to both of the northern attack sites. One of the reporters raised her hand. Will your group help with the reconstruction of Dana and Greenwich? Street shook his head. No, ma'am. Ideally, we would have. However, it looks like the wizards in the remaining 2 towns are developing plans to rebuild those 2 cities by themselves. Besides, the nuclear targets need help much more urgently. Ray Adventures Catalog. New this month. Introducing the Extendatant. This magically enhanced camping aid is the size of an ordinary tent and is small enough to fit in the trunk of a car. It takes only moments to erect, like all of our other products. However, this product is different from any other tent on the market. How so? The Extendatant is magical. Instead of enclosing an area of about 30 square feet, this device provides a dry, safe environment for between 500 and 1,000 square feet. The 500 square foot model sells for $999. The 750 square foot model sells for $1,399, and the 1,000 square foot model sells for $1,799. How does it work? The wizards have informed us that it has been ensorcelled in a way so that objects inside it shrink to a fraction of their normal size as soon as they are placed completely inside the tent. Beyond that, they have just told us it's magic. Try out the new Extendatant, a store near you, Government District, Rockter Rattle City State of Rockter Rattle. Tony was beyond boredom. Another hour of this, till lunch, he thought, as he glanced at the clock above the door. At least it's Armor and Walker training after that. Only sensible thing to do in this damned place. It seemed like a good idea at the time. Take the oaths, they said. Serve the city, they said. Promotions, salary, and health care are better than anywhere else in Rockter Rattle, they said. But why, oh why, didn't they say anything about the legal training? About the dawn to noon, 6 days out of 7, 2 damned years of legal training. Life as a blind dolphin sounded quite alluring to him now, but he already passed that choice up. Of course, the training was necessary. When one takes an unbreakable vow to obey the laws of the city, knowing the law was vital, in the truest sense of the word. The other things also put him off. Military was supposed to be like the border defense, but instead of the cozy, family-like but nonetheless highly coordinated attitude he got used to with the Red Squad, here everything was somewhat mechanical, somehow less lively. Literally, too. He was far from being the only one with an artificial body part, though he had yet to see anyone else with 2 magical eyes. But it was everywhere. Instead of squads with largely constant membership for years, here there was only a chain of command, and people were transferred between units all the time. Instead of everyone having a number in the unit, showing his standing among his squadmates. Here they had ranks, and any debate between those of the same rank was usually decided by seniority, a needlessly overcomplicated system in his opinion. Even the standing orders and maneuvers were number-coded instead of just giving them a sensible name. It was numbers everywhere they soldn't have been, and nowhere where they should. It was an upside-down world after the border defense. "Corporal Tony, are you listening to me?" The teacher's voice interrupted his musings. "You should remove that blindfold so I can be sure you don't sleep in class. Never mind, keep in on. Those magical eyes of yours are just too unnerving." Simriwin Manor, downtown, rocked a rattle. A casual observer could have mistaken the assembled folks for the lesser council. Nearly half its members were here, both from greater and minor houses, though obviously the guilds could not be involved. Their oaths compelled them to obey laws which were strictly forbidding conspiracies. Many foreign diplomats were present too, some emissaries from the merpeople tribes, and almost all of the air-breather ambassadors. The eldest of House Simriwin spoke up. "Fellow citizens and honored guests, we have gathered here because we all feel something needs to be done with the leadership of this city and the merpeople assembly. The recent actions of the eldest have left us questioning the man's sanity. He is going to doom us all. We must stop him." A Gulliver consortium wizard responded. "That we can all see. The question is, how can you correct his mistake? Our hidden lands are already exposed. They are only shown on a very old relic, dating back to the Hammer of Ra. Most Muggles can be convinced these lands are no longer there if you keep your magical defenses up. Those few who know you are there can be bribed to keep their mouths shut." Another wizard scoffed. "Offering them bribes. They'll keep asking for more. We are asking for blackmail here. What if they keep increasing their demands? It may be even worse than being exposed." A centaur responded. "Look how they threaten Círdan. What would they do to Howiennum if they found out about us? Or for that matter, Festendry. We have much to hide from them." "Then what will we do? Run to Atlantis for help, saying exposure threatens our way of life and the peace. They allowed the fall of the Sows in the first place. Your Atlantis should best be left out of this. This is an internal affair. Even you should not normally be here. And don't forget, they are only interested in humans. For all we know, their apocalypsometer wouldn't even react if only us non-humans were threatened by something. No, it's simple. The eldest must go. Once he's out of the picture, I, as the head of the most powerful house of the most powerful alliance, will be elected as his successor. And I will rule with all our safety in mind." "Not so fast," Elder Simriwin interrupted Elder Zace. "We don't have majority yet. Houses Snurbevan, Zuckwudis, Duskrin, and Suinrev, a total half of great houses, are behind the eldest. If he dies, they will elect one of them, and the Nenorca haven't yet taken sides either. Out of 15 minor houses, I only see 2 here. This won't be enough." Simriwin dropped the bombshell. "It will, once I let the rest of them learn what I know of our supposedly most virtuous eldest and his bastard daughter." Salesian Ambassador Jai rose. "I have to say, it's underhanded, but at least this way he can live. Forcing him to resign could work. There is no need for bloodshed." "Oh, there is, there is. As long as the old man lives, he can ruin our plans. He must die, the sooner the better." "No, you can't afford such assassination," insisted that Salal. "Rocktrattle is already unmasked. The eyes of the Muggle world are on you. For your own good, you must find another way." The merpeople leader became smug. "Do you really wish to protect us, instead of just trying to keep your friend Hesu alive?" As he mentioned the eldest's old name, panic ran through the black wizard's face. However, he still had some tricks up his sleeve. "Hesu, who's that? I don't remember anyone with that name, and you don't either since Obliviatus Maxim." Crack snapped his neck as he fell on the ground dead. A smug-looking centaur flexed his fingers at the opposite end of the room, then said, "Oops, look at that. He fell off some stairs and died. Let this be an example for all of you. You are with us, or accidents start happening to you. Now, on to the next topic, how to kill your eldest." Chapter 276, Ultimatum to Círdan. Wednesday, July 11, 1996, Oval Office, White House, Washington. DQ United States of America. Clinton swore and turned to face the window. "You're absolutely certain of this, Radner?" Radner nodded. "Yes, Mr. President. The agent was able to contact Jason Kuhlman, the second officer on the Big Texas. All 4 men are being held at Altry's plantation, 5 Tree Plantation. They have been made into serfs and have been marked with the tattoo you saw on the heads of the 3 refugees who came here." Clinton slammed his fist on the table. "Círdan is going to pay for that somehow. Frustrated that we walked away with 3 of their serfs, they decided to take 4 back." "That's what it looks like, sir." The president's face hardened. "You guys can teleport, can't you? We'll send a strike force in and take them back." Radner shook his head. "That won't work, sir. International apparition is forbidden, and Círdan has a Portkey barrier up as well. They appear to have gotten your message, sir, and are slowly starting to mobilize. At the very least, they've raised their defense alert level to the point that Portkeys aren't allowed in. Can we invade? I doubt they'd stand a chance against advanced Muggle technology. We'd wipe them out in no time." Radner blanched. "We can invade, sir. However, I strongly discourage an invasion. There are thousands of wizards there, and they are very good at dealing with Muggles. This could very well turn into another Vietnam. And to be frank, you can't afford that with the recession and the promise to become more isolationist. Finally, sir, recall that the Americans don't know Círdan exists." Clinton grunted. "I forgot about that. Well, we'll have someone else do it then. Send a message to those 3 lunatics running Círdan. Give them the following ultimatum. Either they return our men and begin reforms to emancipate the serfs, or we'll blow the whistle on their whole damned operation. We'll go to the UN and tell them that they've been enslaving Muggles. We'll tell NATO as well, and since they've attacked some of our men, NATO will have to help out." Radner thought about that for a moment. "That's a clever idea, sir. Everyone is going to want to take a shot at these guys. There's only one problem, however. Our wizards cannot be used as a first strike weapon." Clinton frowned. "Why not?" "The Círdani are not dark wizards. The first oath prevents a preemptive strike unless the target wizards are dark. This will limit our numbers." Clinton swore. "Those damned eyes said I oaths. They're holding people in thrall. Does that sound like something Mother Teresa would do?" Radner tried to explain. "The Círdani are not evil. They're a feudal state, and feudalism is a bit passe in modern society. Nevertheless, feudalism is not intrinsically evil. Besides, I highly doubt the Círdani see themselves as dark wizards. From what I recall, the serfdom started up because the wizards were taking care of the Muggles using magic, and the Muggles began working for the wizards to repay the favor." "I see. And unless I'm mistaken, the enemy wizards will be able to fight back against our Muggle forces because they are on defense." "Correct. However, you have to keep in mind that once they attack us, the wizards will be able to engage, as one of the American wizards' allies has been attacked. The wizards can get involved once the battle starts. Keep in mind, though, that once the 2 wizarding armies start fighting, each other things get a lot more complicated." Clinton thought for a moment. Finally, he turned back to Radner. "Suggestions, Mr. Radner?" Radner thought for a moment. "Send over the ultimatum. Hopefully they'll agree to back down and figure that not all of us have taken the novice-level oaths. If they don't, gather a force of NATO troops and wizards and have them try to force Círdan to reform itself. Make it a black op so no one knows about it unless it succeeds, at which point you get some good publicity with the election coming up." Clinton nodded. "Sounds like a plan. Can we occupy Círdan?" Radner shook his head. "No, sir. It would be a long-term occupation, and we would likely have to deal with guerrilla warfare. Besides, they know the terrain and have a high concentration of wizards. Think of the Russians in Afghanistan, but worse." Clinton whistled. "You're probably right. Well, let's hope it doesn't get to that point. Head over there with the ultimatum and see what you can do. Yes, sir. 2 exceeds 4 headquartersland of the Howiehendams. Farr smiled. Just what we've been looking for. The Americans have started an anti-slavery crusade. All we need to do is attract their attention and tell them what's going on over here. Ihil nodded. That's what it seems like, boss. The question is how on earth we tell them we're here. Farr chuckled. Simple. The statute of secrecy is gone. We figure out what's maintaining the field which hides this nation from the Muggles and destroy it. Ihil laughed. Clever. That forces them to step aside for a moment to recast the spell. However, by then it will be too late. The Muggles will have found out, and while they're busy, will have started our own revolt. There's only one problem, however. There is. What's that? We don't know what or who is maintaining that field. And if I were a centaur, I'd make sure we don't find out. Farr nodded. We don't. The centaurs, however, do. Ihil rolled his eyes. And why would they tell us? Because some of lower classes can't afford yahoos, and they are kind of jealous of the upper classes in that regard. They'd really like it if everyone was on the same level, wouldn't you think? Both men laughed at that. Chapter 277, Hammer of Ra Memorial. Thursday, July 12, 1996, Wizarding Service Corporation Headquarters, Dallas. T's United States of America important policy change for WSC employees. As you are undoubtedly aware, several momentous events have taken place over the past few weeks. The evil wizard known as Voldemort was destroyed, yet his death triggered a cataclysm unlike anything seen in the history of civilization. Several great cities were attacked with nuclear weapons, and over 1 million people were killed in a span of 3 hours. Grand Mugwump Dialanis, who is now the wizarding ambassador to the United Nations, was forced to invoke the Judgment Day Protocol for the 3rd time in the history of mankind, and the first time in over 3,500 years. Those red balls you saw hovering in the air on the morning of June 20th were magical emp bombs, which would disable all unauthorized wand use, so that Atlantis and the rest of the good wizarding forces could annihilate the Death Eaters, Al-Qaeda, and Hamas. If any of you wondered why your wands would not work between 1500Z and 1530Z, 10:00 to 10:30 am Central Time, on that date, this is why. Although Atlantis's mission was successful, there were still more surprises to come. Several of the World for Humans groups argued that the wizards had to police themselves better to make sure that no more Voldemorts emerged to threaten the world. Haydar Dagher, the new Grand Mugwump and former Minister of Magic of Saudi Arabia, agreed with this premise and introduced some important reforms. The most important of these are the institution of the 6 vows, known informally as the Aes Sedai Oaths. Derived from an American fantasy series where the fictional wizards were forced to police themselves after nearly destroying the world, the 6 vows are 6 promises which wizards are to make, while under the unbreakable vow enchantment, which causes excruciating pain when the oaths are violated. They are: 1. To not use magic as a weapon except in self-defense or defense of an ally, unless the opponent is a dark wizard. 2. To not assist in the creation of weapons. 3. To follow the laws of the land fairly and impartially. 4. To transmit the 6 vows to the next generation of wizards. 5. To not renounce any of these vows. And 6. To either never lie or to allow a secrecy censor to be available for conversations at all times. Wizards who swear all 6 vows are given the title Aes Sedai. Wizards who swear all but the 6th are given the title Accepted. Wizards who swear just the 1st and 3rd vows are called novices. With this in mind, WSC has adopted a new policy change, which will affect all of its employees from Eric Street himself all the way down. All WSC employees must swear the 1st and 3rd oaths by the end of September or risk termination. Employees who earn accepted status will get a 10% raise, and employees who earn full Eyes Sedai status will receive a 20% raise. In addition, you will be expected to perform your civic duty to vote in the November election. We can understand that this may be a shock to you. Nevertheless, it is a necessary evil. Wizarding Services Corporation is, in one real sense, the first major wizarding organization designed to interact and serve Muggles. We are, in effect, the common American citizen's primary contact with the magical world. Consequently, we are effectively ambassadors to the Muggle world. Needless to say, it is imperative that ambassadors behave in a manner appropriate for their station. No corrupt or illegal activities. No vigilante justice without going through the American court system. No unforgivable curses. Muggles will be looking to you for leadership and support, and WSC expects you to fulfill that role to the rest of your abilities. Remember that you are both Americans as well as wizards. You may be interested to know that the term Aes Sedai in the fantasy series, the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan, which starts with the novel Eye of the World, translates to servant of all. Being a servant of all is precisely what WSC was designed for, helping Muggles regardless of gender, race, or creed. I expect that adoption of these vows will help us be the best we can be. If you want more information, please contact your supervisor. Thank you for your attention. Submersible Alvin floor of the Indian Ocean, 900 miles southeast of Madagascar. The sonar operator put his hands to his headset and turned to the navigator. The mermaid says, "We're getting close, maybe a mile or so away at this point. Turn on the headlights and see what we've got down there." The navigator nodded and flicked the switch. The floodlights turned on, illuminating the seafloor in front of the submarine. The sonar operator whistled as he looked out the window. "I've seen unusual areas of the ocean floor before, but I have never seen anything like this, and I'm not even including the mermaid off the port bow." The navigator nodded. "I fully agree with you, Bob. This is absolutely remarkable." The lights had revealed a chaotic jumble of rocks of different sizes, with fish swimming around them. Usually, the seafloor was smooth and sandy. This landscape looked like something seen by the Apollo astronauts on the moon. The navigator pointed out the window. "The ground seems to be coming up in the direction we're going. I think the mermaid is right. This has all the characteristics of an ejector blanket from an impact. Take a look at that boulder over there. It's probably 50 feet across. I wouldn't have wanted to be around when whatever threw it over here came down. Hold on when I take a rock sample." The navigator stopped the Alvin, lowered it to the seabed, and began manipulating the sub's robotic arms. He withdrew a small container from the storage compartment and filled it with loose rocks from the site. Securing the container inside the sub, he started the vessel's engines again. The rocks got bigger and bigger as the ground continued to rise. Finally, the sonar operator got another report from the mermaid. "It's right here, Joe. It's going to be a bit of a surprise. Let's get the film rolling here." The navigator pressed the button to activate the amok projector, and the machine beeped and started taking in the scene. Seconds later, the seafloor vanished. The sonar operator looked at his console. Sea level has just dropped by several thousand feet straight down. That's got to be the crater rim. Stop here for a second and get a panorama. The navigator nodded and began recording the sights. It became obvious that the abrupt drop in the sea level extended as far as the sub could see. "I don't see any radius of curvature here. This looks to be almost a straight line, almost like a fault or cliff. Can you ask Madison over there how big it is?" The sonar operator nodded and was surprised at the 30 kilometers, much bigger than Meteor Crater. The navigator whistled. "Ouch, that must have hurt. Hold on while I get a sample from the rim, and then we'll go on in." The Alvin proceeded over the lip of the crater and headed down. At 14,500 feet, 2,000 feet below the rim, the seafloor re-emerged with its carpet of rocks. The sub took another sample and then started heading for the center of the crater. The rocks began to disappear as they headed into the crater, and eventually the floor became sandy again. However, 14 kilometers in, more rocks appeared. The two humans looked at each other in puzzlement. Finally, the navigator whistled. "What the hell? What are rocks doing here? This looks like it should be ground zero, good God. That can't be." The sonar operator nodded. "Yup, I just got word from the mermaid. That's artificial. It's a memorial to the millions of people killed in the hammer of Ra impact. I recognize the merpeople's architecture." Both men looked on in awe as the ship approached a huge complex of spires, buildings, and arrangements of shells about the size of a football field. It was obvious that the merpeople realized that this was a historic site and had wanted to tell their descendants about it. Being careful not to damage any of the structures, the sub took pictures and obtained close-ups of many of the buildings. The mermaid explained through the sonar operator that the inscriptions on the buildings described the disaster to tourists. Meanwhile, the navigator pointed out that several of the carvings seemed to mimic those on the obelisk in the National Mall. Both men suddenly found themselves taking off their headsets and putting their hands over their hearts. It just seemed appropriate, given the circumstances. Eventually, they came back to reality. They took a sample of sand from the crater floor, just outside the monument's grounds, and started the long journey back to the surface near the Greater Council Chamber, Rock to Rattle City State of Rock to Rattle. The eldest was swimming toward his private quarters to have some refreshments. So far, his day was as bad as any other in the past week. The air breathers demanded assurance that he'll convince the Muggles that their hidden lands are no longer there. The houses demanded that, seeing there is no known hostile outside power, he puts an end to the wartime truce, and the merpeople of the various coastal cities demanded that he provides them protection and independence from Muggles, if or rather when they are discovered. At least he could win the favor of some by promising to convince the Muggles to cease dolphin killing and pay more attention to their environment. However, he didn't see Jai today. The Tsalal delegation was taken over by another one who could provide no meaningful answer about his old friend's whereabouts. The assassins spotted their prey approaching, visibly troubled by his thoughts, and quickly looked around to check for any bystanders. Finding none, they proceeded with their plan. The eldest nodded in greeting to the pair of guards waiting at his personal quarters. Even they seemed to be affected by his mood. He had known this too for years, just as he knew any other oath-taker, and he'd never seen them so nervous. They looked a bit like a pair of strangers, forced to replace well-trained men on a job they had no experience with. It was over in a few seconds. When the eldest passed them, both assassins lunged at him, stabbing him with needles so far concealed in their stolen guard uniforms. The old man immediately collapsed in spasms. The poison acted fast. They winced when they heard him gritting his teeth so hard. Some of them audibly cracked. One of them leaned down and whispered in his ears, "Elder Simriwin sends his regards." Then they closed the door and swam away as quick as they could. They had to be in a safe place when the polyjuice potion weared out if they wanted to get out of this alive. In their hurry, they had no time to wait and confirm the death of their target, but there was no need. The poison was extremely potent, and they had seen it working on him. Of course, if they would have waited only few more seconds, they would have noticed how the two pinpricks stopped bleeding and healed. Moments later, eldest's private quarters. Slowly, the eldest looked around with eyes slowly regaining their sight well, as much of it as old age has left. Listening intently, he made sure there was no one nearby. Then he shakily rose from the floor, then spat the crushed remains of a false tooth. Still feeling the otherworldly taste of phoenix tears in his mouth, he entered a side room filled with air and opened a chest. There lied some of his newest toys, sent home by Ambassador Zeke just 2 days ago. He selected one of the Muggle communication devices, read the short notes strapped to it, then activated it. Same time, Commander's office. The device on Idris's desk suddenly came alive with the distorted voice of the eldest. "Commander, you hear me?" He picked it up, activated it, and responded. "Yes, my lord." "Good. Listen, this is urgent. Are you alone?" "Yes, eldest. We don't have much time to act. I've been assassinated." Commander Idris was confused. "You sound very much alive, my lord." "I am. But Simriwin thinks I'm dead, and I want him to keep thinking that for the time being. Commander, send a guild wizard to my private quarters. I don't care who, as long as he took the oaths and can apparate and cast Geminio." They wanted to make it look natural, let it appear that way. "It will be done, my lord. Anything else I can do for you?" "Now that you say it, yes. Book another appointment with my dentist for this afternoon, and notify an Oblivator too." Chapter 278. Dudley, the Anomaly. Saturday, July 13, 1996. Yes. I messed that up somewhere. Residents of the Ministry of Magic Mary Territor, New Zealand. The Minister of Magic winced as another broom made its way out of the sky and landed on the ground in front of his house. Its rider, a 40-something witch, was also carrying a sign, "Throw the bum out." She soon made her way into the crowd, most of whom were holding signs. "I swore all six, and he can't swear too." "Defeat corruption, with eyes said I vows." "Britain for humans, need target practice." "Hey Ra," hammered him. "Hypocrite." "Let's hear it for the Int," said I. There were already a good 20 people or so outside, and virtually all of them were saying things highly uncomplimentary of the minister and his policies. He shook his head and turned to the two auras who were in the house with him. "I can't believe this is happening. Why do they care if I swear the vows or not? I don't have anything to hide, and I'm just resisting because it sets a bad precedent in the wizarding community." One of the auras tried to explain. "I think I know what's going on, Minister. Although we both realize that you haven't done anything wrong, the people don't. They figure you're holding out because you're corrupt and are doing creative things like embezzling money behind their backs." "It wouldn't be the first time. Politicians did that, sir." "But I'm not doing that. How could they possibly think that?" The second aura answered this. "You're refusing to uphold the third vow, the one that forces the person to follow the laws of the land and its ruler. This can be seen as an evasion, sir, or a stall tactic to try to buy time for you to hide any illegal activities." The minister pointed out the window. "One of you go out and tell them. My quarrel is not with the people of New Zealand, it's with Atlantis." The aura shrugged his shoulders. "And why would they believe us? We work for you. For all they know, we're part of your little insider scheme, or you're bribing us to support you." The minister wrung his hand feverishly. "Have either of you sworn the oaths?" The first aura indicated his colleague. "I'm a novice, and he's an accepted." "Good. One of you tell them. Show them that stupid card of yours and explain." The second aura shook his head. "It won't work, sir. We could be lying." "Lying? What? Oh, damn. That's the sixth vow, and neither of you have sworn it." The second aura nodded. "That's correct, sir. The fact that I have not sworn the sixth oath would be obvious if you were to look at my silver card." The minister was about to say something when the sound of a helicopter suddenly became audible over the crowd. All three men watched as a television news chopper landed on the front yard and disgorged a large platoon of reporters. Within 5 minutes, they had set up their cameras and had started reporting live from within the crowd. A couple of them interviewed a protester, while two others began walking towards the front door. A few seconds later, the door to the chopper opened again, revealing the Prime Minister. The man did not look happy. The crowd immediately started cheering and chanting, "Throw the bum out." The woman with the sign was waving it around like one of the revolutionaries storming the Bastille. The aura winced and spoke softly to the Minister of Magic. "Sir, I must warn you that technically you fall under his jurisdiction now that the statute of secrecy has been revoked. This means that if he orders your arrest or dismissal, both Steve and I must comply and enforce it." "The third vow demands it, sir. He exemplifies the laws of the land." If I were you, sir, I would swear those two vows as soon as you can. I will be more than willing to officiate." The minister hesitated for a moment. Finally, his shoulders slumped. "I think you're right, Barry. I think you're right. Let's do it when the Prime Minister comes in so he can be a witness." The borough Great Britain. Harry heard Dudley's shriek from the attic and had an awful suspicion what had happened. Dropping his book, he headed upstairs to see Dudley with an ashen look on his face. Harry made a mental note to scream at George when he got a chance. He grabbed Dudley, who was shaking. "Dudley, what's wrong?" "There's a ghost up in the attic. He tried to eat me." Harry shook Dudley to try to bring him to his senses. "For one thing, it's a ghoul, not a ghost. Second, he's harmless. My guess is that he was as scared of you as you were. He's never seen you before. Let me guess, did George let you up there?" Dudley nodded. "Yes, how do you know?" Harry swore. "Be very wary of George. He runs a joke shop, after all. He is notorious for playing pranks on people. Whatever you do, do not eat anything he asks you to try." Dudley drew a deep breath. "I'll try to remember that. I sure hope he's not picking on me because I'm a Muggle. Bloody hell, from what you've been telling me, I shouldn't be able to see those monsters." Harry's retort was cut short when something occurred to him. Looking at Dudley curiously, he remarked, "You know, Dudley, you have a point. You shouldn't be able to see those monsters. Come to think of it, you shouldn't have been able to see that Dementor last August." Dudley shivered. "Does that mean that the monsters have marked me out as a target?" Harry grunted impatiently. "No, Dudley. These ghouls and ghosts won't harm you, and the only reason the Dementor attacked you was because Voldemort was controlling it and had sent it after me. As far as what it means, Dudley, I don't know. I honestly don't know. Something here doesn't make sense. You're only the second person I know who is able to see magical creatures without being able to cast spells." Dudley's eyebrows shot up. "Really? Who was the first?" "Argus Filch, a staff member at Hogwarts." Dudley stared at Harry quizzically. What would a Muggle be doing at Hogwarts? How did he get in? Harry chuckled. "He apparently is very good at faking it, using something called Quickspell. However, back to the topic at hand. I think we should tell the wizards about this, Dudley, and possibly the Muggle biologists. It's obvious you're not a pure Muggle, and it's obvious you're not a wizard. Furthermore, you've got wizarding relatives, an aunt and a cousin. Would you be willing to consent to an examination?" Dudley shrugged. "Sure, might as well. What am I, Harry?" Harry paused a minute to think. Finally, he shook his head. "I don't know, Dudley. I honestly don't know. Hopefully, we'll be able to find out. A most definitely secret room in the government district of Rockter City state of Rockter. In a small, very secret room, the most influential government officials of the city-state have gathered. The eldest, his aide, the commander, leaders of the wizard guides, and a few others, each and every one of them oath-takers. No one else could be trusted at that point. The eldest looked around. "Good, everyone's here. Let's get this started. Reports to me now." Commander Idris began. "As the law dictates, the city has been quarantined and a news blackout issued until the investigation of your apparent demise and the election of your successor is complete, my lord. As for armed forces, we have 157 armed walkers with trained drivers, along with 4219 normal units, already mobilized." "Good, then we have some time to cover this up without the Muggles noticing. Senya, tell me about politics." "Our succession plans so far seem good. Houses Snurbevan, Zuckwoodies, Duskrin and Suinrev are behind us, with your nephew, Ritva and my mother ready to step down and support me as permanent eldest. It'd be up to the minor houses. So far, we have two for sure. But our scheme is pretty well known. They must be aware of it. If I were Simriwin, I'd rally them with some good agenda, probably come up with some dirt on your successor, and hope the other three great houses stand behind me. Problem is, I have no idea what they'll come up with, sir. They must have found something about you. Without something solid, their plan would fall apart. It means I must return, which in turn means I must accuse them of assassination and conspiracy. That could easily be a disaster that ruins our public image. How is the investigation going? A wizard answered, "We have found the bodies of the two guards and the Tsalal ambassador." The eldest bowed his head. He had feared this, even expected this, but it still hurt. With a slightly croaking voice, he asked, "How did he die?" His neck was broken. He died instantly, without pain. It looks like a freak accident, just like one of the guards, but in light of the recent events, I say these are highly suspicious. And the other guard died the same way as you almost did. Looks like violent spasms and a heart attack. We found a very small injury and some traces of some quickly decomposing poison, but only because you told us where to look. The eldest was thinking fast. That would work fine for us. There's already a quarantine after all. Another wizard interrupted. There is one more thing you should know. The dead guards are not the ones who attacked you. They died in places where they couldn't have realistically been if they had been the assassins. So not Imperio and oath removal then. Any idea how they did it? We have reasons to suspect that House Zace's private alchemists have managed to make a merpeople version of the polyjuice potion. It's the most probable explanation. The eldest thought it over. It will make this mess a bit more complicated. Listen, our plan is. Chapter 279. Ultimatum delivered. Monday, July 15, 1996. Career Placement, Office, Massachusetts, Institute of Technology, Cambridge. United States of America. Jason Morgenstern swore as he looked through the list of job openings. The number of positions had dwindled yet again, and most of those which remained in the Boston area were looking for people with master's degrees or PhDs. He was really hoping he wouldn't have to move, yet he was worried he wouldn't have much of a choice. He had a lot of student loans to pay off, and he had just started kicking himself for not joining Rock, before realizing that he'd have likely been sent off to Korea as soon as he graduated in early June. He had made some calls to several biology firms in the Boston area. Although most of them agreed he was a good candidate, they couldn't afford to hire anyone right now, or they were forced to offer him a disturbingly low salary. Guinevere was telling him that he would likely do well to accept one of those positions. Several of his friends had lost their jobs and were taking temporary positions as gardeners and lifeguards for the time being. He had asked Guinevere if she could use her magic to help him. She had shaken her head, however. It wouldn't be appropriate for her to interfere with the job selection process, and trying to brainwash people into accepting a particular candidate involved use of the forbidden imperious curse. Besides, he had a better chance of getting a position than most other new graduates. He went to MIT, one of the best schools in the nation. Others weren't as lucky. People who went to community colleges, two-year colleges, Harv. All thoughts of Harvey Mudd College suddenly vanished from his mind, as one of the people running the career placement office tacked a new list of positions onto the wall. He walked over there to take a look. At first, he wasn't impressed, but things changed in a hurry. Apparently, they were positions at a firm in South Carolina known as Herald Green Pharmaceutical Corporation. They involved working with an experimental substance which was reputed to cure all sorts of diseases and possibly retard aging as well. Jason's eyes widened when he realized the potential of such a drug. If this drug did what it claimed, it would revolutionize the medical industry. His eyes widened at the proposed salary, over $100,000 a year for a new hire. Where on earth had they gotten all that money from? Had they stumbled across a gold mine or something like that? A position like this would very likely warrant relocation to Charleston. He looked down the list of qualifications for the job. He had most of them, but not all. Still, it didn't hurt to try, and as Guinevere said, a MIT degree was likely more valuable than one from a lesser school. He dropped his resume into the envelope underneath the job postings and continued his rounds through the room. If all else fails, he could try going to grad school. That witch from Russian House was returning to MIT in September for two purposes: to continue grad school in normal engineering studies and to serve as the first course 19 professor. He was reluctant to add any more debt to his record. However, getting a master's or PhD would likely help him stall for time until the economy turned around. Ciudadani Council Chamber Ciudadan. Travis Radner shook his head. Chancellors, I'm afraid I've come for an unpleasant reason. We have received intelligence that 4 of our men are being held hostage on 5 Tree Plantation, owned by the late Altry. Supposedly his widow is now running it. Ortilu grimaced. Oh boy, I was afraid of this. I take it your Muggle president isn't happy about this. Indeed, Chancellor, he is not. I regret that I have been ordered to deliver an ultimatum from our president. All 3 chancellors gasped, and Sayatnan put her hands to her mouth. An ultimatum? Surely you aren't going to attack us. We'd crush you, as we've got more wizards than your entire nation likely has. No, Chancellor. The terms are these. If you don't return our men and begin reforming your society in a manner which leads to the emancipation of your slaves by the end of 2011, President Clinton will have no choice but to reveal your existence and your lifestyle to the rest of the Muggle world. Be advised that slavery of any sort is considered a crime against humanity in the rest of the Muggle world, and entire coalitions of nations have been formed to liberate people held in thrall. Virtually, the entire Muggle world will be allied against you, including nations from both sides of the Atlantic. There was a long silence. Finally, Vixar swore. I'd have recommended extraditing Altry for war crimes and throwing him under the hooves of the chariot, but that's impossible because he's dead. Radner nodded. Correct. And from what I've been told, his wife and son treat the slaves much more humanely than Altry did. They seem actually quite progressive for Ciudadani. They cannot be made to suffer any more than they already have from the loss of their husband and father. Mrs. Altry's actions also show that a society where the slaves are treated fairly may actually work. Radner drew a deep breath before continuing. Ladies and gentlemen, from what I've heard of your society, this is not insurmountable. If you were to pay your Muggles and allow them to improve their lots somewhat, it would go a long way towards reducing their hardship. Muggles are people as well, after all. They have feelings and can be hurt. Furthermore, it is well known that happy workers perform better. Your productivity may actually increase if you emancipate your slaves, and the money saved can improve both wizarding and Muggle lives even further. He paused one last time. Your history started out as a feudal state, where the Muggles worked for the wizards in exchange for magical services. Over the years, the wizards grew corrupt and began relegating the Muggles to serf status and then slaves. Why not go back to what your founders intended? They probably knew what they were talking about, chancellors. Radner looked at the chancellors sympathetically. You have 1 week to make up your mind. If you do choose to start reforms, the United States and its allied nations will do everything in their power to assist you with this difficult transition. Be advised, however, that the American civilians will not hear about it. They do not know about your society, and if you accept our demands, they will never know. Southern Círdan. The 3 Vila made sure that no one was around. Satisfied that they were alone, they deactivated their disillusionment charms and transformed out of their harpy forms. It had taken them a while to fly over there, but they'd done it. The leader of the group called her 2 colleagues over to her and handed out sets of Ciudadani clothing. All right, Nicole. You're in charge of trying to figure out if there are any abolitionist leaders among the wizards here. Ali, you put your disillusionment charm back on and see if there are any Muggles who want assistance. Whatever you do, do not do anything rash unless I tell you. For all we know, the government will agree to the United States' demands, and we won't have to fight anyone. Is that understood? Both women nodded. Yes, Commander. Good, now move. Gnawing Grindelow Tavern, downtown Rockter-Rattle city state of Rockter-Rattle. The Gnawing Grindelow Tavern was a quality establishment. usually frequented by the elite of the underwater city-state, both merpeople and air-breathers. The current citywide quarantine made wonders to consumption. Plenty of rich merchants, purses bulging with freshly made profit, had to spend a few more days in the city. Other affected people didn't spend their extra time in Rattle nearly as comfortable. The gang of goblins, as of Saturday convicted for kidnapping, attempted murder, complicity in murder, unlicensed wand manufacture and possession, had spent these days in small cells, waiting for extradition to international wizarding authorities, in accordance with international treaties dealing with magical criminals who are not Rattle citizens. A treaty that cost the city some money, but saved it the trouble of maintaining a wizard prison on their own. Yet another group was those who profited from the misery of the previously mentioned individuals. To be fair, they had plenty of reasons to celebrate the verdict, and with Myrtil Trapanier's full salary paid by her former employer, who sadly acknowledged that the Vila will return to her homeland ASAP, and Samana, yes, I admit, I was a smuggler, but I was pardoned. Get over it. Nasthuros's various questionable incomes effectively washed clear by the jury. They had more than enough money to do so with style. So, Myrtil, what will you do when the quarantine is over? You still so adamant about returning to Nestor? The Vila had to admit Sam looked quite handsome in formal wear. It might have had something to do with the man's noble upbringing. The contrast with his usual roguish image was quite striking. Although thinking about it, he did always behave as a gentleman. Unfortunately, yes. I've had enough of it for a while, and besides, I don't know what would I do here for a living, because I sure won't ever again step on a stage. With the money I've made here, I'll have enough time back home to continue my studies and find a decent job. Though the wizard was elegant, his companion stole the spotlight without doubt. To be fair, she helped Samana to keep some of his focus, while her evening dress had a neckline worthy of attention. As if a Vila wouldn't be attractive in any given clothing, she also had a necklace of runes, reading, as the wizard discovered with some shame, "My eyes are up there." But won't you miss any of it? I've never been to Nestor, but I'm sure you can find some good things here, and only here. I mean, look at me. I'm from another land, and I've got more than my fair share of trouble here, but still, I'd rather live here than anywhere else. I'd be glad if you'd visit me sometimes. Then I'd see some of those things you mention. Pardon me, came the startled answer from the wizard. Myrtil blushed. I meant your kindness, courage, and helpfulness. Never I thought I'll be fighting side by side with a Ciudadani. What about side by side with a friend? Yeah, I could do that. Lesser Council Chamber. Elder Simriwin was annoyed. Well, actually, he advanced past annoyed and into furious sometimes yesterday. What do you mean you can't lift the quarantine? You had days to investigate the old man's death, and nothing to show that indicates it wasn't natural. I demand that you cease this nonsense, so we can get started with the election now. The healer guide witch was disturbingly calm. You cannot not order me to do anything yet, Elder. I obey the law of this city, and only the law of this city. We have reasons to believe the recent deaths of our eldest, his guards, and the Tsalal ambassador were not simple accidents. Now, if you allow me, I'll continue asking my questions. If anyone noticed the Muggle surveillance devices in the room, they did not recognize them. Secret room, somewhere close. The eldest was sitting in a chair, watching the monitors displaying the events in and near the council. Within arm's reach, a radio lay on the table. He slowly picked it up. Commander Idris, the time has come. Initiate contingency protocol no. 24. It will be done, my lord. Lesser Council Chamber. The shouting of the disputants was getting even louder, Elder Simriwin noticed. Funny, he didn't know Murmish shouting can generate such vibrations. The main doors swung open as dozens of walkers, equipped with tridents and huge crossbows, or were those siege ballistae, marched in the chamber. At the same time, guards wearing the uniform of the Oath-Taker elite poured in from every secondary door. Stunned, Simriwin looked around in the chamber. His co-conspirators, with the exception of Elder Zace, currently in the restroom, were apparently equally shocked, and so were most of the other merpeople. The guild wizards, however, were disturbingly calm, and Senya was even grinning. The oath-takers are in this. But how? Those speculations about the eldest finding a way to cheat the oaths are just rumors that I started, aren't they? When he spoke, he was a lot more confident. What is the meaning of this? How dare you disturb the council? I demand explanations now. One of the machines partially retracted its helmet, allowing the driver, Commander Idris, to be seen. By orders of the eldest, you are under arrest, Elder Simriwin. You and your co-conspirators are exposed. Your houses are being pacified as we speak. This is nonsense. You don't have the right to do this. None of you do. Only the eldest of the city can give such orders, and only with enough proof, and you have neither. The next Vyas, however, turned his blood into ice. On the contrary, he has plenty of both, said the eldest, entering the chamber between the walkers. You, stared Simriwin. You. Me. Then the same voice came from the side entrance leading to the restrooms. Me too. Everyone gasped and turned towards the second eldest, then back to the first. Elder Simriwin found his voice first. Imposters, you are not real, either of you. You just used Zace's potion to masquerade as our late leader. I can't even believe the oath-takers could be fooled by such idiots. I mean, two of you at once. The first eldest answered. Thank you for confirming that you knew that potion works. You've made our work so much easier. That me over there is actually Elder Zace, demonstrating his house's invention and his loyalty to me and Rock to Rattle. He will revert to his normal shape in the next 10 minutes. Oh, and just that you know, he gave you all up to save his house. The traitor turned to his betrayer. You spineless idiot, you doomed us all, the fake eldest shrugged. Nothing personal, it's just business. The real one said, your associates have left you alone. Your house's forces are hopelessly cornered by city soldiers, and we have plenty of evidence against you in all 3 murders and the attempted one. It's checkmate, Simriwin. The only thing you can still do is damage control. There are several ways things can go now. For Atlantis, they are all the same. That means I can do them all I want. For you and your house, it's life or death. You choose. Elder Simriwin's voice was weak, defeated, broken. Tell me the choices. All the world will know is there was an outbreak of mass hallucinations and a few deaths, because someone accidentally released a toxin in the waters of the government district. If your house is disbanded, with you and everyone who knew about your plot taking the oaths, the outbreak was limited to the above-mentioned fatalities, and I don't care where the rest of your people go. The city will be strengthened, everyone will live, you only lose your ambitions. You'll order our death if we resist, won't you? Your words, not mine. What's your choice? Chapter 280, The Stone's Human Trial. Monday, July 15, 1996, Harold Green Pharmaceutical Corporation, Charleston. United States of America. Daniel Green stood at the podium with the movie screen behind him. This was going to be his moment, the culmination of everything he had hoped to gain when he had co-founded Harold Green Pharmaceutical Corporation. He had hoped to do 2 things, make a lot of money and save a lot of lives. Now, thanks to Wizard Hendrickson and the Philosopher's Stone, he was about to do both. Hendrickson had already demonstrated that he would be able to make money in more ways than one. The stone had successfully managed to transmute mercury and lead into gold, and Green had promptly bought up all of the leaded pipes and old-fashioned thermometers he could get his hands on for sanitary purposes. After careful experimentation, the staff had determined that 3 isotopes were safe for transmutation into gold: Hg-198, Hg-199, and Pb-204. Other isotopes with at least 79 protons and at least 118 neutrons would work, except that they would produce radioactive byproducts, which could jeopardize the health of the operator. It was fairly obvious that the stone served as an energy source for guided nuclear fission. The three reactions were pasted on the wall in Green's office. PB 204, O197 plus Li7 Hg 199, O197 plus H2 Hg 198, O197 plus H1. The initial attempt to turn lead into gold had used a natural mixture of isotopes, of which PB 204 was in the minority. This had produced various radioactive isotopes of lithium, which had started Geiger counters crackling. Green couldn't help but admit that Dr. Flamel would have made a very good experimental chemist, even by modern standards. Not only did he first describe radioactivity, albeit not knowing what it was, blaming radiation poisoning issues on angering Christ, he developed a method for using fractional distillation for separating out the isotopes of mercury, so that the lightest and safest isotopes would float to the top of the liquid. Furthermore, he had noticed that the hydrogen released during the reaction could be ignited by a candle flame, and had warned people to extinguish all flames before turning mercury into gold. The ancient wizard's record-keeping and logbooks had a professional level of detail, more than enough for Hendrickson to develop his own stone. There had been a brief hiccup when Hendrickson had had second thoughts over giving mortals the ability to achieve eternal life. Green had taken care of that pretty quickly, however, by telling him that he could keep 25% of the gold he produced with the stone. Realizing that the gold would give him a much higher salary than anything else, the mercenary wizard agreed to continue working for Harold Green. Hendrickson had just reported that everything was set up in the laboratory. Everyone agreed that it would be unwise to bring the stone or the elixir out in the open for the demonstration, as it would be too easy for competitors or reporters to steal it or damage it. The experiment would be similar to the first one done, but with one key difference. Instead of using the stone to cure a sick rat, they were going to use the stone to cure someone with an incurable medical condition. Several such patients had been invited to the press conference, and one of them would be chosen at random to receive the treatment. Green didn't know what types of conditions would be represented in the audience, which ensured that Hendrickson didn't know in advance what type of treatment was necessary for the chosen patient. The stone would have to determine the nature of the disease and provide the correct treatment. Green drew a deep breath, adjusted his tie, and began. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for coming to this press conference. My name is Mr. Daniel Green, co-founder and CEO of Harold Green Pharmaceutical Corporation. To my right is Lou Herold, co-founder and CFO. We've called this press conference to announce a new compound we've developed which will revolutionize medicine as we know it. For hundreds of years, perhaps even thousands, legends existed of the elixir of life, a nutrient or fluid which had the ability to heal injuries, cure disease, and possibly retard or even stop aging. Chemists, in some cases even wizards, searched for it for centuries and made very little progress. Ladies and gentlemen, the search is over. Now, thanks to the combination of magic and technology, we have developed the tool necessary for creating the elixir of life. Ladies and gentlemen, meet the philosopher's stone. Green reached into his pocket and brought out the Geminiad copy of the stone. Although bereft of its healing abilities as a simple duplicate, it still looked pretty impressive. It's a ruby the size of a golf ball, he thought. Hell, it's impressive. People started chattering like crazy and began taking photographs. Several of the sick people started walking up to try to get their hands on it, but he told everyone to sit back down. Actually, this is not the actual stone. This is a duplicate, one which is inert and does not have any curative properties. The original one is in the lab, where our resident wizard, David Hendrickson, will perform a demonstration. If you would turn your attention to the movie screen behind me, you will be able to see the demonstration in real time. He turned the lights off and activated the TV projector. Seconds later, Hendrickson's image appeared on the view screen in a rather cluttered lab filled with beakers and chemicals. In one hand was a red object, which was obviously the original stone. In the other hand was a vial filled with a glowing white liquid. Hendrickson bowed to the camera. "Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm David Hendrickson, and I'm a wizard working for Herald Green. When I was told about the Philosopher's Stone project, I signed up, hoping to see what I could do to improve the lives of people around the world." Green chuckled to himself, though kept his face carefully impassive. By people around the world, he probably meant himself and the bosses. Hendrickson continued. "We did extensive research and traveled all around the world to try to get components and information. Translation: we went to England and stole stuff from Flamel. It was a long and dangerous journey, and at several times our lives were in jeopardy. Nevertheless, it paid off, and now it's time to show everyone what we've done. In my right hand here is the Philosopher's Stone. I'll bring it closer to the camera so you can get a better view. In my other hand is the Elixir of Life, an exciting medical compound which can be created using the stone. It's in this beaker over here." He brought the beaker and stone close to the camera so everyone could see. "We could tell you how we did it, but unfortunately that wouldn't be a good idea for business, so we'll have to hold off on that for now. Suffice it to say, however, that one needs a wizard and quite possibly a well-equipped chemical lab to get the job done. I'm a wizard, and here's the lab." Needless to say, extravagant claims like this require confirmation. To that end, I'm going to draw a raffle ticket out of this bucket. Several terminally ill patients have been invited to this session, and each of them has been given a ticket. We at Herald Green do not know which type of condition each of them has, and as a result, we have not been able to tell the stone what exactly it must do. I will draw a number out of the bucket. Whoever has that number should stand up and let us escort him or her to the laboratory for treatment. The patient turned out to be a man named Bobby Fry. Fry started to explain what he had, but Green shushed him up to ensure that Hendrickson had no knowledge of what exactly needed to be done. Shaking Fry's hand and wishing him luck, he escorted the patient over to the laboratory. A couple of minutes later, he appeared on the video camera as Green returned to the press room. Hendrickson shook Fry's hand. "Welcome, how are you feeling?" Fry chuckled nervously. "Excited, nervous, and hopeful." "How bad is your condition?" Fry looked a bit embarrassed. "I'm probably going to lose body parts if this doesn't work." Hendrickson blanched a little, but composed himself. "Don't worry, Mr. Fry, this should work. Would you be so kind as to drink the contents of this beaker?" Fry looked at it warily. "It's glowing like mad. Don't tell me it's radioactive." Hendrickson shook his head. "No, Mr. Fry, it's not. I can't give you any more details as to what is in it, but it's not radioactive. First things first, however. Note that I am not carrying a wand and that the beaker is perfectly sealed. The elixir has been prepared without knowledge of your condition, and I will not be tampering with it the rest of the way. Now that it's beyond our control, can you explain what you have?" "Testicular cancer, now badly metastasized." Hendrickson bit his lip, and Green drew a deep breath. What was supposed to happen next was that Hendrickson was supposed to take a biopsy from that area to get a before sample. It didn't dawn on him that the patient would have to take his pants off in the middle of a press conference. Nevertheless, everyone consented to continue with the operation. Most of the people in the audience turned their backs as the doctors examined Fry and brought the resulting samples out into the press room, where they were placed in a bin marked before. Once the samples were safely out of Hendrickson's reach, he asked Fry to drink the contents of the beaker. Fry took a sip, and his eyes widened. Grinning, he drank down the whole thing and licked his lips. Hendrickson noticed the reaction and had to ask, "What does it taste like?" Fry laughed. "Chocolate malt, believe it or not. It tastes great." Hendrickson smiled. "I'm not surprised. If it's good for you, your body will like it. While we wait for the elixir to do its stuff, let's head back to the press room for the impartial panel of doctors up there to get a reading on how bad your condition is. What was your last number, Mr. Fry? Let's see if this is consistent. Dan, if you would be so good as to tell us when you're done. A few minutes went by as the doctors did their analysis. Finally, the number came back, 37.9. Hendrickson nodded when the number came back. 37.9. That's way too high, naturally. Anything above 5 is bad. Let's see if we can do something about that. Can we take another sample now? Everyone turned their backs again as the patient provided another sample. The sample was brought back and placed in a bin labeled after. The doctors began working on the second sample as Hendrickson and Fry emerged into the press room with empty hands. The expression on the doctors' faces answered all of their questions. Shock and awe across the board. Green had to prompt the doctors 3 times to get a response. Eventually, one of them whispered the answer. The room exploded. People started asking questions by the dozen, and the queries blended into an incomprehensible din. People were patting Fry on the back and offering congratulations all around. Green looked at Hendrickson and winked. Now the fun really began. Chapter 281. Flamel's Worst Nightmare. Monday, July 15, 1996, Black Tower Hogsmeade Great Britain Albus Dumbledore and Nicholas Flamel looked at the Muggle video recording in silence for several moments. Finally, they looked at each other and spoke simultaneously. Flamel slammed his fist against the table. This is not good. Not good. I didn't think they'd be able to pull it off even with the diary. I mean, they'd have to translate the old French and... Dumbledore tried to cut in. Nishas, calm down. Flamel grabbed his wand and blasted the television screen with a curse. Calm down. I sacrificed my own stone to prevent it from getting into Voldemort's hands. For all we know, there's someone else out here who's just waiting to pounce on these fellows and steal the stone. For all we know, some Muggle can. Dumbledore had to shout to be heard. Nicholas, screaming about it is not going to solve the problem. We've got contingency plans for this, Nicholas. We've got to think this through. Flamel threw his hands up in the air. And what do you propose that we do? Making me Minister of Magic would have been a good idea, except for those damn eyes said I oaths Britain for humans forced onto all future British Ministers of Magic. What were you thinking, Albus? If I take over now, I'd have to swear to tell the truth, and all they'd have to do is ask me when I was born. Dumbledore put his head in his hands. All right, I'll admit that was a mistake on my part. However, to be honest, protecting the rest of the British wizarding community from Isabel Miller is a high priority, and I honestly didn't believe they'd get the stone out this fast, if at all. You do have a point, however. I'm going to have to leave office, certainly, but we're going to have to put someone else in as Minister of Magic who won't be able to do any more damage if he's forced to tell the truth. Flamel wrung his hands in frustration. And who would that be? You've got information linking me to the stone all over chocolate frog cards. Everyone knows that I've made the stone. Dumbledore thought for a moment. All right, Nicholas, let's think about this. We're going to have to improvise and do so very quickly. For one thing, we're going to have to scrap the idea of telling everyone that the stone doesn't work and that Harold Green faked it. We've both seen the video, and it's fairly obvious that they've done an excellent test of the stone. It leaves no room for tampering or error, and it seems to be scientifically sound. Flamel snorted. Unless that Fry guy was a plant and they deliberately drew his number. For all we know, that before sample was taken months before he started chemotherapy. Dumbledore shook his head. I don't think so, Nicholas. You saw the expression on Hendrickson's face when he heard the man had testicular cancer. It was obvious they hadn't expected their patient to have the tumor in somewhere so adult. My guess is that they plan to take the biopsy then and there from an arm, a leg, or whatever. They never thought that they'd have to worry about it being rated mature. As it was, they requested that people turn their backs. Can we say they did something creative when everyone's backs were turned? No, Nicholas. The camera was running the whole time, and it showed the wizards taking the samples. There was no fakery. Furthermore, there's a second part of the video. In it, the doctors who process the two samples do some DNA testing and confirm that both A are from Fry and B were taken within 15 minutes of each other. Nicholas, they have a very strong case, and they know it. Furthermore, realize that this has made the news all over the medical community. I highly doubt that they would risk a major scandal by announcing something they couldn't back up. Doing so would almost certainly discredit the company and put it out of business. Nicholas' face suddenly reddened even further. There's more. It just occurred to me. You know how people were wondering where this company got all its money from? Their website indicates that they've been collecting lead and mercury. Lead and mercury, Albus. Those are the two elements which have isotopes which can safely be turned into gold. If they've been turning them into gold and selling that. Dumbledore winced. Oh dear, I hadn't thought of that. It sounds like they've figured out the stone's other abilities as well. I take it that we should assume that they know about the age retardation. Flamel snorted. Undoubtedly, I waxed all over it in the damn diary. I remember that even thought it was 600 years ago. We can deny it, at which point they shove that book in our faces. Shit, Albus, you can't deny it. Oh shit, we've got a problem. Do they know you're an eyes, said I now. Dumbledore shook his head. I don't know, Nicholas, I don't know, but if they do. Nicholas looked at him hard. Albus, let me do the talking here. We can't risk you being incapable of lying here. If you want, you can help me with my speech. I've got an idea, mister. Green smiled as Dr. Flamel appeared on the monitor. Harold Green was going to have fun here, he thought. Well, Dr. Flamel, what a pleasant surprise. How can I help you? Flamel looked furious. I know exactly how you can help me, Mr. Green. You can help me by destroying that stone and giving me back my damn notes. You obviously broke into my place and copied my diary, and it's also obvious that you realized I destroyed the stone to prevent it from falling into Voldemort's hands. For humanity's sake, Green, give it up. Our species is not mature enough to deserve the stone. Hell, we nearly destroyed ourselves when one dark wizard decided to make a stink. Green chuckled. You seriously think that the human race doesn't deserve cures for deadly diseases like cancer? Cures for cancer, I'll give you. Creating gold and prolonging life indefinitely. No. If you seriously intend to keep the stone, keep it to curing illnesses, and that's it. There was an audible gasp in the room, and Green grinned. I've got him, he thought. Flamel had no way to know that there were still a few reporters in the room, as the television cameras were all pointed directly at him. He motioned to one of his aides and told him to get the rest of the reporters. Turning back to Flamel, he tried to maintain his composure. You have a problem with prolonging life indefinitely, Dr. Flamel. Flamel nodded. Absolutely, Mr. Green. I've given this a lot of thought over the past few years and have reached that inescapable conclusion. Green then hit him with the coup de grace. Dr. Flamel, would you be so kind as to tell me how your Minister of Magic manages to look so good at age 114? There was another gasp from the audience, and the first hints of fear appeared on Flamel's face. Nevertheless, the ancient wizard had a response ready. Wizards generally live longer than Muggles. That's a well-known fact. Really, Samuel supposedly died around age 60. Green could barely avoid gloating as Flamel dug himself in deeper. Those were in ancient days, Mr. Green. You were lucky to hit 40 most of the time then. Green grunted. You're sure that your friendship with Dumbledore hasn't influenced that at all? Flamel blinked. What? Wait a minute. You think I hell no? Dumbledore was the one who told me to destroy it in the first place. Ask him, he's an eyes, said I. He'll say I've never helped him out with the stone. Green shrugged and reached into his briefcase for the photographs from Flamel's school. Dumbledore's an eyes, said I. All 6 vows. Good to know. I'll ask him that, and while I'm there I'll ask him to confirm your date of birth. The blood drained from Flamel's face as Green showed Flamel the old pictures. Licking his lips nervously, Flamel pointed at the pictures. "What do you have the pictures of my father and grandfather for?" "Because I find it rather curious that they look a lot like you." Flamel shrugged. "Children look like their parents. Big deal." Green winked. "An exact copy. I highly doubt it, especially across 3 generations." The people in the room with Green were starting to murmur excitedly among themselves. Apparently Flamel picked up the noise, and the old wizard's mood darkened even further. Flamel finally got fed up. "Give me the diary, Green. You can keep the stone if you want. Just give me the diary." Green reached into his briefcase and brought out a copy of the diary. There were at least 4 of them now in various secure places in Herald Green's headquarters. "I've got a lot of old books in my possession, Dr. Flamel. Is this the book you're referring to?" Flamel nodded. "Yes, that's my diary. Tell me where you are so I can get it." Green nodded. "I will. However, I'm kind of curious about some of the entries. Let's try one of the early ones over here." He opened the book near the beginning. Flamel suddenly screamed when he realized what Green was going to do. "Stop." Green did what he could to translate the Old French. "June 6, 1357, did research on." The entire room exploded. People started shouting incoherently and jumping into the field of view. No fewer than 6 people tried asking Flamel questions simultaneously. Flamel seemed to be in shock as Green handed over the diary to the reporters. Although they wouldn't be able to read the contents because of the 14th century French, they'd recognize the numbers and expressions like Muggles. "No, no." Green chuckled. "Well, Dr. Flamel, it seems that your text about the Philosopher's Stone not working may have been in error after all." Grand Mugwump's office Atlantis Dagher's secretary barely had time to announce the 2 visitors when the 2 wizards apparated into the room. Travis Radnor's face looked absolutely horrified, and Dumbledore's was deeply disturbed. The new Grand Mugwump had a bad feeling about this. Had Voldemort come back? Had America for Humans done something rash? It occurred to him that although many of the high-level wizards had sworn at least novice-level oaths, no one had thought of asking the World for Humans representatives to do the same thing. If World for Humans intended to turn upon the wizards after shackling them with the 6 vows. He had seriously considered asking the Muggles to swear unbreakable vows as well. However, the realization that unbreakable vows could work on Muggles could have devastating repercussions in world politics. Virtually every nation's secrets could be exposed by the fact that Full Eyes said I couldn't lie. Dagher was starting to have second thought about agreeing to that fantasy writer's oaths to begin with. He grunted and turned to the 2 men. "Good evening, gentlemen. I take it something has happened which you don't particularly like. Let me guess Britain for Humans isn't standing by their agreement and have just started attacking us when we've shackled ourselves to the 6 vows." Dumbledore shook his head. "No, Grand Mugwump, it's worse, much worse." Dagger didn't like the sound of this. Worse than defenseless attacks on wizards. "What's going on, Dumbledore? Don't tell me Voldemort came back. I thought he was dead. Did he have a Horcrux left over that we didn't know about and fake his death?" Radnor answered this. "It's not Voldemort, sir. It's worse than even that, I'm afraid. Unless we contain this immediately, the entire Muggle world is going to go berserk." Dagger gaped at him. "Worse even than Voldemort coming back. Merlin's beard, what the hell is going on here? Did one of you do something to Círdan? The situation in the Ukraine still appears to be stable, though we've still got a hell of a lot of Ukrainians trying to get into the Atlantis lottery. I'm still not entirely sure why Endukaku has us at DEFCON 3, with the Ukraine as the flashpoint." Radnor shook his head. "It's not Círdan, sir, though to be honest we're trying to force the Círdani to cave in by threatening to expose them and their peculiarities to the Muggles." Dagger whistled. "Clever idea, Mr. Dagger. I don't see how they can fight that. It's too much of a risk. All right, gentlemen, what's going on?" Both visitors spoke in unison. The Muggles have the Philosopher's Stone. Dagger blinked. Come again. Dumbledore explained. You may recall, Hader, that a few months ago someone broke into Nicholas Flamel's house and stole the instructions for creating the stone. Dagger scratched his head. I didn't. Radner slapped the palm of his hand against his forehead. Albus, you spoke with Dialonis, not Dagger. Did Dialonis tell you about this? Dagger shook his head. It must have been lower priority than the immediate aftermath of Judgment Day. I see. Well, Soane broke into Nicholas Flamel's house and stole the instructions for creating the stone. The thief was apparently hired by Herald Green Pharmaceutical Corporation, based in Charleston, South Carolina. That was bad enough. However, things got worse, much worse. They managed to get their hands on a wizard, an alchemist named David Hendrickson. Dagger reeled for a moment. You mean to tell me that a Muggle medical company actually has a stone, and they're planning on selling the elixir of life? Dumbledore reached into his pocket and brought out a Muggle recording device. It's even worse than that. Harold Green held a press conference to introduce the stone and show how it can be used to cure cancer. They treated someone right in their labs. Dagger grunted. So the Muggles have a cure for cancer. What's wrong with that? If anything, that's overdue. Radner gritted his teeth. Daniel Green showed Flamel the diary, and Flamel acknowledged it was his. Then he promptly showed everyone that one of the entries was from 1357. Dagger's blood drained from his face. You're telling me that the Muggles have proof Flamel's been alive for over 600 years? Dumbledore nodded. I'm afraid so, Hader. What's more, it's starting to get some news coverage and is on the verge of getting onto the internet. Here, sir, just watch this. The three men watched the Herald Green press conference together. When the recording ended, Dagger nearly collapsed in his chair. This is not good, gentlemen. Dumbledore groaned. That's exactly what Flamel's reaction was when he first saw the demonstration. We need to think of something, and think of it fast. I agree, Albus. Where is Dr. Flamel right now? He's in the process of being promoted to Minister of Magic, Hader. I've resigned and will be returning to Hogwarts in September, which will just happen to make Flamel Minister. Yes, he'll have to take the Aes Sedai oath like any other British Minister of Magic, but it looks like he doesn't have many secrets left to reveal. You have to understand, sir, that he's forgotten how he made the stone over the past 600 years, and he destroyed his copy of the diary, so he has no way to find out. Dagger thought for a moment. As Minister of Magic, he's going to have the entire British Ministry of Magic at his beck and call to go after these people. Dumbledore nodded. Exactly. That's precisely why I made him Deputy Minister. I foresaw something like this happening and wanted to give Harold Green a bit of a surprise when the stone came out. Unfortunately, since Harold Green is an American company, he would fall under Radner's jurisdiction, or yours if it goes international. Dagger swore. I hope that's going to be enough, because if it gets onto the internet, well, you saw what happened last time something secret got onto the internet. The statute of secrecy went down. Radner looked intently at his feet. That's what we're afraid of, sir. As it is, it may already be too late. Dagger put his head in his hands. What do you recommend? Radner explained. I've already told the president about this issue, and he agrees that the human race is not mature enough to use the elixir of life responsibly. He plans to stall for time by forcing them to go through reams and reams of paperwork and procedures associated with the Food and Drug Administration. If they intended to sell a drug in the United States, they'd better have all this stuff filled out. Dagger chuckled. Muggle bureaucracy, gotta love it. I agree, sir. Meanwhile, Flamel is about to issue a statement admitting that he made the Philosopher's Stone. He can't lie, of course, and that using the Philosopher's Stone can cause radiation poisoning, and that the elixir of life can't cure everything. The Grand Mugwump looked at Radner skeptically. Radiation poisoning? Like what killed Sirius Black? Dumbledore chimed in here. Yes, sir. Technically, it's not a lie, so Flamel can say it. However, it's not the entire truth either. You see, the stone changes heavy metals into gold using directed nuclear fission. Since there is only one stable isotope of gold, with 79 protons and 118 neutrons, transforming a substance with X protons and Y neutrons will create a substance with X 79 protons and Y 118 neutrons as a byproduct. There is no guarantee that this second nucleus is stable. In fact, there are only three isotopes which produce stable daughter nuclei: Hg 198, Hg 199, and Pb 204. As far as the stone not being able to cure everything, it just so happens that one of the things it can't cure is radiation poisoning, as Flamel didn't know to check for it when he wrote the instructions in 1350 or whenever it was. Now the key here is that, although you don't get radiation poisoning from creating or using the elixir of life, the Muggles won't realize that. Dagger smiled in understanding. Flamel is going to try to scare them out of using the stone by claiming that it's not guaranteed to work, and that if it does work, it can make them sick. They know he's telling the truth, so they'll buy it. Exactly. The only fly in the ointment here is that Herald Green appears to have already changed lead into gold and has purchased enough radiation suits to survive another Judgment Day. However, if they start selling radiation suits, or if the Muggles try creating the elixir of life and realize they don't get sick, then we have a problem. Dagger thought some more. Can a mass obliviation work? Radner shook his head. It's too late, sir. It's been a good hour or so since the stone was introduced, and at least one major American broadcasting company, NBC, has broken the story. We'd have to force NBC to say that it's a false alarm, of course. That could be doable if we can find someone who isn't a full eye Sedai. However, there's a complication. This Bobby Fry fellow, who is now healthy. To truly stop the crisis, we'd have to make it so that there is no Muggle evidence that the stone existed, let alone worked. Dagger hissed. You mean you'd have to give Fry back his cancer again and convince him nothing ever happened? Dumbledore nodded. I'm afraid so. That violates every single moral and ethical guideline I can think of, let alone the eyes said I oaths. Can you obliviate him and claim that it went into remission on its own? Or if anything, the stone worked using the placebo effect? Possibly, sir. Ideally, I'd like to see the world thinking the stone could just cure cancer, and that's it no making gold and extending life. Unfortunately, that may not be an option. This is going to be tricky, Hadar, very tricky. Dagger could not help but agree with that. Make it so, gentlemen. Oh, and one more thing, if you don't mind. Dumbledore looked at him. Yes. Get your hands on that damn stone and destroy it, along with any copy of the diary you can find. Put a price on Hendrickson's head high enough to force any Muggle to think about doing our dirty work for us, say, $5 million. If I were him, I'd Fidelius the stone to myself without telling anyone, which means our problems are solved if he experiences an unfortunate accident. Tell Dialenus to tell the United Nations to keep a lid on this as well as they can. Finally, start supporting Muggle oncology research hospitals. If we're taking away one possible cure for cancer, we'd better offer them a replacement. Herald Green Pharmaceutical Corporation, Charleston. United States of America. David Hendrickson was kicking himself. He knew now that creating the stone had been a mistake, and he'd made the mistake of being talked into it by a large influx of self-created gold. Now, he would have given anything, including all of that gold, to go back in time and dismiss the reporters before Green showed everyone that Flamel was 600 years old. He remembered reading Flamel's notes in the English version of the diary. Mankind was too corrupt and irresponsible to deserve an artifact as powerful as the Philosopher's Stone. As long as people like Voldemort were around, no human being could be entrusted with such an object. That comment had proven prophetic, as it had been written a good 4 years before Judgment Day. When someone with 600 years of experience says something, wise people listen. The question now, what was he supposed to do with the stone? His first instinct was to destroy it. Although Hendrickson was deeply troubled by the fact that the stone's destruction would cost thousands of sick people their lives due to injury and disease, the simple fact was that the same substance, the elixir of life, served to both stop aging and cure disease. You couldn't prevent immortality without taking the ability to cure disease with it. Flamel's notes had been explicit about that. If the patient was sick, it cured the disease. If the patient was well, it stopped aging. A sick person could also be given a double dosage to both cure the disease and prevent the person from aging. His work for Harold Green was done. They had contracted him to produce the philosopher's stone, and he had done so. He could plan his next moves without having to worry about allegiance to Harold Green. He had been just about to destroy it, telling Mr. Green that there had been an accident trying to work with it, when it occurred to him that as long as no one else had access to the stone, no one would be able to abuse it. So, instead of destroying it, he had changed his mind and fideliused it to himself, determined not to reveal the secret to anyone else. That way, he was in complete control over what exactly would be done with the stone. He intended to run away with the stone, vowing to cure disease, and only cure disease. He would not wreck the economy by mass-producing gold, as he'd be able to get rich simply by advertising a cure for cancer. After all, there was no way to prevent that from making the news at this point. There wouldn't be any need to be a mercenary wizard after this. He also promised himself that he wouldn't try to extend his life past 100. He suspected that his last 10 years would consist of funeral after funeral, and he would probably welcome the opportunity to not have to worry about dealing with the deaths of any more friends. Hendrickson had grimaced what he had thought that. He was currently 43 and in pretty good health. Old age was still far in the future. Making a promise like this would be easy now. The real issue was whether he'd be able to fulfill it when the time got closer. He had briefly considered returning it to Flamel. He shot that down, however, when he realized that Flamel would likely destroy it as soon as he got his hands on it. Although that would ensure that no one abused it, it also meant that no one would be healed by the elixir of life that way. Fideliusing the stone to himself would also ensure that no one would be able to steal it. It also ensured that no one tried to kill him to steal the stone, as his death would immediately render the stone irrecoverable. Harold Green had thrown a huge party celebrating the production of the elixir of life. Hendrickson had taken advantage of that by going through all of the company's copies of Flamel's diary and modifying the instructions so that they would produce a non-functional copy of the stone. Furthermore, having helped Mr. Green write an article for the company's website, he'd managed to get onto the computer and censor the article to remove anything about life extension or gold production. He doubted that it would eliminate all of the old copies of the article, but it couldn't hurt. He stuffed the stone into his briefcase and set to work. It took a while for him to get out of his office and away from all the video cameras, but he eventually did it. He was horrified when he found reporters prompting him to show them the stone, but he then realized that he could just hand over the duplicate if all else failed. He had just made it out the door when he heard a squeal of brakes, followed by a scream and a thud. He spun, and a woman collapsed on the ground underneath the hood of a Chevrolet. It was obvious what had happened. That woman needed help, and needed it quickly. Hendrickson didn't hesitate. Saving a young woman's life in a situation like this was certainly not abuse. He hurried over the scene and looked around. He was the first person there other than the driver who was trying to give the victim CPR. Telling the driver he was an empt, Hendrickson told the driver to stand aside while he investigated. Making sure no one was looking, he brought out a vial of the elixir of life and convinced the woman to swallow its contents. Not surprisingly, the wounds healed and the cuts closed. The victim's eyes suddenly widened, and she looked at him. "I've been saved. Are you an angel?" "I were." That was as far as she got when before the obliviation hit her. The driver was about to question him when his memories were also wiped. The woman now thought that she had been just missed by the car, and the driver had the distinct impression that a rock had hit his bumper. He was about to leave when he saw the bloodstain on the ground. Suddenly, an idea occurred to him, something which would neatly cover his escape. He modified the memory of the driver once again, and then prepared to Geminio himself and apparate out of there. The driver never saw him leave. All the driver could think about was that there was no way this accident was his fault. After all, that poor man had clutched his chest crossing the street and had fallen right in front of him. There was nothing he could have done to avoid him, and by the time he'd gotten out to help the victim was already dead. Tuesday, July 16, 1996, Boston Globe, headquarters Boston, United States of America, South Carolina firm develops cure for all diseases, and aging 600-year-old wizard emerges warning world against any abuse. In what is unquestionably the most remarkable combination of magic and Muggle technology, ever since the exposure of the wizarding world, in January, Harold Green Pharmaceutical Corporation of Charleston has announced that it has teamed up with a wizard to develop a magical artifact known as the Philosopher's Stone. This device can be used to produce the elixir of life, a substance which can be used to cure virtually all known diseases, as well as slow aging to a halt. Expanding upon the work of the 14th century French wizard Nicolas Flamel said, Harold Green demonstrated the elixir's ability to cure a cancer patient in front of a live audience. In most cases, the cure for cancer would have been enough to win Harold Green's team the Nobel Prize in Medicine. However, this announcement was upstaged by the arrival of none other than Flamel himself, who had apparently survived in England to this time using his own Philosopher's Stone. Originally from France, Dr. Flamel faked his death in 1411 and moved to England with his wife and apprentice shortly thereafter. He spent the next 680 years serving as a professor at various Muggle and wizarding institutions. In order to hide the fact that he was not aging, he would routinely retire, stay away for a few years, and return under another name, supposedly the old professor's son. He would take the pseudonyms Robert Flamel and John Flamel, as well as use his real name, Nicholas. He served on several important wizarding committees over the years, many of which are classified. He resigned from his academic position, another retirement, and became Deputy Minister of Magic after the events of Judgment Day. He suddenly found himself thrust into the limelight when the stone came out and Dumbledore resigned, promoting Flamel to British Minister of Magic. In accordance with a deal brokered between Britain for Humans and the British Ministry of Magic, Flamel agreed to swear all 6 Aes Sedai oaths upon becoming minister. Flamel expressed concern about the newly created stone. The Philosopher's Stone is an extremely powerful magical object, one which is very easy to abuse. Your culture has a story called Lord of the Rings, where people who initially promise to destroy a powerful magical tool eventually are corrupted by its power and decide to abuse it. Both you and I are familiar with the expression, power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely. With its ability to extend life indefinitely and cure most diseases, the Philosopher's Stone is not something for any mortal to trifle with. When asked to explain why he himself created his stone to begin with, Flamel explained that he had not expected evil wizards like Voldemort to obtain so much power, and he certainly had not counted on the internet, globalization, and above all the fall of the Statute of Secrecy. I freely confess that I enjoyed being able to live forever for the first 300 years, and I lived a rather mundane life as a Muggle professor. However, as I grew older and obtained wisdom and experience far beyond that of people with ordinary lifespans, I slowly began to realize that the stone could be dangerous and began to wean myself off everything other than its life extension properties. I was also forced to withhold the elixir of life from several people I felt could no longer be trusted. At the moment, there are only 3 people left alive from my era: me, my wife, and my former apprentice Hugh. There were times where I was tempted to destroy the stone and let the three of us go. However, even I couldn't give it up. I eventually decided to keep it out of sight, hoping I would not be tempted by it anymore, and locked it up in a vault at Gringotts, a wizarding bank which was destroyed in the London blast. Locking it away in the vault did little good, as I still kept on using it. Eventually, things came out ahead. In the late summer of 1991, rumors emerged that one of Voldemort's men planned to steal the stone. I warned Albus Dumbledore, headmaster of Hogwarts, and he had one of his staff members transport the stone to Hogwarts and place it under heavy guard. This proved to have been a wise move, as Voldemort's men broke into Gringotts and reached the vault only to find it empty. Voldemort refused to be thwarted, however, and eventually possessed a Hogwarts instructor to gain access to the school. Had it not been for three brave students, including, incidentally, both Hermione Granger and Harry Potter, Voldemort could have come out with the stone. It was this incident that convinced Dumbledore that the stone had to be destroyed. After long discussions with my wife and apprentice, I agreed to destroy the stone. We are aging normally now, and I expect to pass on somewhere in the late 2000s. Flamel concluded his tale with a warning. I have lived almost 7 centuries and have yet to find someone worthy of the stone. Keep that in mind, especially in times like this where one wizard, can nearly bring society to its knees. Flamel was disturbed by what Harold Green had done. The fact that they created a stone and announced it to the Muggles is bad enough. What they do not realize is that they were able to do so by breaking into my house and stealing my notes. If there's anyone who exemplifies a personality which does not deserve use of a stone, it would be Daniel Green. Hermione Granger, the brilliant Hogwarts student whose prompt action saved millions of lives during Judgment Day, agreed with Flamel's assessment. Harry Potter and I were indeed involved with the attempt to recover the Philosopher's Stone at Hogwarts. Assisted by my close friend Ronald Weasley, we discovered that one of the professors may be trying to steal the stone. We eventually made our way through the defenses surrounding the stone and caught the professor in the act. We were surprised to find that it was not the person we were expecting, but someone else whom we never even suspected. The professor in question, a certain Quirrell, spent his entire tenure at Hogwarts with his head in a turban. What none of us realized was that Voldemort had possessed him, and Voldemort's face was hidden behind the turban. Voldemort ordered Quirrell to steal the stone from Harry, who had managed to discover it. Fortunately, Quirrell was unsuccessful, and Dumbledore was able to fend him off before Voldemort could escape with the stone. Mr. Green dismissed the concerns voiced by Hermione and Flamel. Although I understand where Dr. Flamel is coming from, we intend to use the stone to cure disease. Just talk to Bobby Fry, a cancer patient who was cured by the elixir of life. Life extension, and in particular immortality, is not currently on the table. Green reports that Harold Green was planning to market the elixir of life under the brand name Vitalix. They are currently in negotiation with the Food and Drug Administration, which is being extremely careful with this new discovery. An FDA spokesman said, "Although we congratulate Harold Green for producing such a marvelous product, we are concerned that it has not undergone enough clinical trials and had its side effects documented. In addition, Dr. Flamel has warned that use of the Philosopher's Stone could cause radiation sickness, and we need to assess the danger to the people manufacturing Vitalix." Green went on to explain how the wizard and the Muggles worked together to create the stone. "We hired a wizard named David Hendrickson to provide the magical support when it came to creating the stone. He did an excellent job and performed some very thorough investigation on rats and chimpanzees before testing the device on humans. Unfortunately, it appears that Mr. Hendrickson died in a car accident shortly after producing the stone. We rushed the elixir of life out to him, but were unable to get there in time. This shows, incidentally, one thing the elixir cannot do: raise the dead. Flamel and Hendrickson were both in agreement that only God can do that. It is a pity that Dave isn't here to witness this moment, and we will hold him forever with the highest regard. Several hospitals in the South have been asked to provide clinical trials for Vitalix. Harold Green expects that the elixir will be available for public use by 2001 at the latest.